before I go on, okay, I don't even know where to start. How to even introduce you? You're a TEDx speaker, the author of an.
I can introduce myself if you want.
Okay, please do.
I am Daniella Mestyanek Young. I am a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership. I grew up in the Children of God, which is one of the world's most notorious religious cults, and then I didn't use the army to get away from that. That's what you would think. No, I got out as a teenager, went to high school, went to college, then signed myself up for the army. So then I commissioned into the army, and I was an intelligence officer for 6.5 years. I went to Afghanistan twice. No, so then after I got out of the military, I tried to work in corporate America, and I was like, this blows. So I decided to write a book and get a master's degree in organizational psychology. So I did that during COVID, got my Harvard degree 20 years after I left the cult. And now I am working on how all of my channels started. I've completely failed as an author to be interesting, but then I woke up to start working on the book I'm writing now called The Culting of America. And I was like, you know what? My life is fascinating. I knit, I read books, I write books, and talk about cults a lot. And I wonder if people want to know about that. So I have one podcast that kind of goes along with the book I'm writing. It's called Cults and the Culting of America. And right now we're doing these in-depth episodes to get into my 10-part list of cults. And then we're going to start really bringing people on. But I try to show not oh, real cults are like this, but here are all the culty things in your life.
Yes.
So then fast forward to my real life as I am a white woman and deconstructing white supremacy.
Yeah.
I realized that there was more that I could do, but with my platform, but also that I still, no matter that the brainwashing has cracked and I'm out of the cult of white supremacy, that doesn't still mean I don't have another decade of deconstruction to do according to my own model. So the White Woman Whisperer and I have teamed up to do a podcast called Hey White Women, where we are literally deconstructing white supremacy like the cult that it is.
Mm-hmm. I already had all these things I want to talk about the book itself, and then I saw some of your more recent, because you're doing more long form content on YouTube. You were talking about the Atlantic article and how that all of us have a little bit of a cult leader in us and a cult follower in us, and we're all on kind of the cult spectrum. And I absolutely agree with that, because I think it's really dangerous for anyone to think that they could not be in an official cult, because I have been my friend Lauren Clark, who was on here, who is my creativity coach. She's the one who brought it to my attention that the improv scene in New York City was very similar to a cult. Exploitation of labor, kiss the ring kind of mentality, all of the isms in it, ableist, sexist, racist, all of it, homophobic, all of it. And that it really and that some of us didn't fit in because we all had jobs. I worked 16-hour days on set, so I could only take a Sunday class and I couldn't hang out. And I mean, it's not a cult, but it was very much like that. And I started to so many things,
Yeah, no, I actually, this week to my weekly cult situation report, I added, someone had asked me about gymnastics. Mm-hmm. And I told them, I was like, any performance or art group, I think has those tendencies, right? You have the revered leader, you have this, my sacred assumption, right? This program works, this is the thing that's gonna, help me go big. And man, I mean, when I was watching Rent the Runway Jr., I was like, this is the cultiest thing ever, this is for these kids. This is probably the first time in their lives they have ever been surrounded by people that are obsessed with the thing they're obsessed with, right? Yeah. So they're literally love bombing each other and these huge icons. And then they have to work really, really, really hard, really, really fast, really busy, really pressure. And then they have to go compete. And then, super culty, they have to just stand there and take any criticism given. Mm-hmm. And every cult has this. They're called degradation ceremonies.
Oh.
And then when they get kicked out, they have to hug them and thank them for the discipline, like we saw in, chapter 1 of my book. Yeah, and I think it's just, and for this matter, friend groups can become culty in the same way. But yeah, so what you were saying, right? Like, so first of all, I think that any of us who have been in toxic controlling relationships, you know how to do it too. We've learned both sides of every relationship that we're in. So that means we know how to be persuasive and manipulative and toxic and abusive. And I sometimes I'm just like, yeah, that not starting a cult is don't be a cult leader. Like I have this whole list of things that can make a group like toxic and bad, and you should look at all of them and these 15 things on my guru gotcha checklist. But like you wake up and you decide, I will wake up and decide to use my skills at like manipulation and rhetoric to like write a book, convince people to buy it, and like create content and not go build a cult.
Yep. Oh my God. Can I add something to that? Because one of my best friends, Liz, that I mention all the time, she was like, I feel like the word manipulation gets a bad rep because manipulation is what women have been doing forever to stay alive. It's a superpower. And she was like, sometimes I have to use my ability to read the room and like anticipate this and that and kind of influence through manipulation. You can use it for good or you can use it for evil.
Yes. Yes, it's a tool. It's a tool. This is the same thing with gossip, right? Another one associated with women. But like the ability to talk about a human behind their back is one of the things that gave us like dominion of the earth. And it's just not good or bad. And this would come up in every, organizational psychologists, I feel like study human manipulation tactics and then we go sell our services to corporate America to help them motivate you to give your labor to build their good cults. And I don't believe in good cults, by the way. Honestly, I don't think there are like better and worse cults. I think like once you're a 10 out of 10 for me, it's just a matter of time and how much space you are given by society and you're going to get bad, right? Scientology got really bad because it's just given time and space and money. So my like spectrum thing is more exactly that, right? Like I have these 10 different parts of group behavior because I decided to define a cult through the organizational psychology lens and just like show you this, right? And I'm like, if you have 10 out of 10, congratulations, you're in a cult. But like if your beloved group only has 5 out of 10 and you ask me as an organizational psychologist to help you with your culture, like those 5 that you have is where I'm going to start. Because like this is how groups go wrong, and even that, I don't think like cults just go wrong. I think they have cult leaders that take them there.
So can you rattle them off really quick?
And again, most of them are not inherently bad in and of themselves. So you have this worldview shift to come under the sacred assumption, the one thing that you have to believe to be a good member. You have a transcendental mission. As I say, cults always promise space travel. It's another time, another place, another body, another something, right, that they get you for. You have self-sacrifice of members, the constant self-sacrifice of members, which is a really important part of how they break you down. Isolation, and isolation doesn't necessarily mean communes anymore in modern day. Your own vernacular, your own language. Like if someone can't drop into a meeting and understand everything, it's a cult language. And then 8, exploitation of labor. This is the one that I think is always bad, and it's tied directly to self-sacrifice. But this is this is why you can't have good cults. And then 9 is high both entrance and exit costs, things you have to give up to be a part, things you lose when you leave. And finally, ends justifies the means mentality.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
You can have a lot of those things. You can still be an organization that's functioning and probably not hurting people too much. I usually tell people, like, if you have more than 5 and you're not in charge of that group, maybe go look for something else. You are in charge of that group. Maybe, like, start looking at some of these things that you do. Because again, most of these are just part of group behavior, right? But it's all about like how you're weaponizing it.
You know, what's funny is like I've been like I seriously think about some of the stuff that I've learned from you before I even read the book, just from following you on TikTok. And one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of times you know, a lot of us, especially if we come from families where there was abuse or a narcissist or just a raging addict, and we all had to play a role and we all had to self-sacrifice and self-abandon to keep that person go as like the center of it, then it's really easy for us to feel alone and wanting a family because we didn't really have one, or we just recreate it, right? So I was never in any cults, but God, I was so set up to get into one. So I kind of like danced with people, like groups that became not a cult, but had a lot of those on them. And even the climbing community, at a certain point, I was like, but what if I don't want to be the best climber in the world? Because we think we're better than everybody. We think like that we're like morally superior, that we're tougher than everybody. We have a language. No one can drop into our conversation and know what on earth we're talking about. There's a code you have to go by, and I mean, it's full of enablers and abusers, and it's all secrets, and everyone keeps each other's secrets, and it's so many other things. And I was like, God, thank God I wasn't amazing at climbing, or I may have just gone straight to the like I'm a pro. Not all climbers, obviously. I'm still friends with climbers. I love climbing, but it's like if you are you the like dirt bag climber bro, live in a van, commit your whole life to it. Because if you're not really a climber.
Right.
You know what I mean?
People love to do that. I was a competitive marathoner. Yeah, so interesting things about the behavior that you said. You know, when we get out of high control groups, I believe that our meters for community and mission and, you know, group before self and all of that are just set so high. Our need for belonging, right? But I think that because all humans have a need for purpose and belonging and community, we don't realize that our meters are set super high. So we go cult hopping, we go looking for this, and we think like, oh, the community was great. It was just this other problem. And the reality is like, it's not healthy. It's not healthy to be that enmeshed with other people. Like, it's not healthy to belong that much. You know, like, and so I compare it to kind of when someone gets out of a abusive relationship and part of healing is learning that you might never hit that height of passion again. And it's because it wasn't good for you.
This whole like this little inner masochist that comes along with this whole thing, like I don't love to suffer, but I really don't know what to do without it. I have no identity without it. It feels so normal that if I don't have a challenge or a problem to solve or something that makes me feel tough, like I think I said the last time we chatted, like I didn't even have a real bed until my 30s because I slept on the floor because that makes me tough, and that makes me it's all like builds character or whatever. And so the more comfortable, the more at peace, the more relaxed I am, the more likely that memories of childhood SA come up and all kinds of things I really don't like. So it's peace, being in my body. Crying is a way that actually forces me to be in my body. I didn't realize that, but and I didn't even know how to cry really until my 30s. And this just running from one thing, this avoiding things and climbing so that I could create my own danger so that I'm in control of the danger and I'm choosing to be in the dangerous situation. And man, all my real healing started, like the real deep stuff started when I had a place to live because I had moments of peace. So thank God I had my creativity to fall into and throw myself into because I don't know what I would have done with all those ghosts that just go boo, you're finally you're gonna listen,
And that is such a key part of this, and like this gets said a lot, but people don't think about like art and creating things. I think is a really, really, really important part of healing. And people now that like my quirky thing is I'm always knitting, right? People every once in a while, they'll be like, how dare you talk about such a serious topic while knitting and trivializing it? And I'm like, I can talk about these serious topics because I am regulating my emotions right now through knitting.
Mm-hmm.
And an important thing you said about the crying, right? Like this is used on everyone who's been under coercive control, which is attitude control and emotional suppression, right? So we have, first of all, appearance control and attitude control. I just wrote a 35 something page paper about this chapter, I mean. And it's emotional evocation, right? So you're supposed to suppress your emotions all the time, right? And you're only supposed to be happy. That's happy, shiny people. And I just wish I could tell all college students in America, like if any group wants to recruit you and everybody is like happy and shiny and smiling at the same time, like run away, because that's not natural, right? Like you've never been in a group of 5 of your friends and like everyone's just having the best day. Like that is emotional suppression. And then they have the emotional evocation, right? The cry night at church, the wacky ceremony that leaves everybody feeling all euphoric, you know, in the military. In the military, it's that 21 gun salute. Like you will stand there and you will not lose your military bearing. And then once you hear that 21 gun salute, you can wail and howl at the moon and just like kind of let it all out. And I think it's an important thing to really understand that when we get out of coercive environments. Like you haven't been allowed to feel. Feeling was dangerous. You had to suppress it all the time. But then you also had these points of like letting it out. That's like, go make yourself emote in some way. And you know what? It's part of being human, right? So this is a much worse story, but like as an intelligence officer, like you just have to learn to deaden your emotions, you know, like the first time you see a report of a triple amputee and you stop and you picture that, like you learn, like you can't do it. You have to harden yourself. And so I've been home for a couple months when Sandy Hook happens. And I literally remember being like, so what? Like, so what? 20 children die all the time. And I was like, no, stop. And I went and I sat there and I looked at their photos until I felt something. Because I was like, this is part of, just like cult leaders have a road to deification. Like this is part of the road to becoming just like an absolute robot that they can drive around.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I can think of first of all, you know, which is one reason why we're storytellers. You feel less alone. But I am not somebody who just naturally emotes, right? But there are certain things that always get me. And so, like when my dad died, I was like, you know what I mean? So like I had to, and I've, you know, and the people who follow my story, like, no, I have a very complicated relationship with my dad. And, you know, the death of a complicated relationship is not necessarily any easier than death of someone that you are just super close to. But every day I would go on a bike ride for an hour and listen to music I knew would make me cry, because I was like, I will never grieve this death if I don't force myself to take an hour and feel stuff. This has been the key for me is getting in touch with that. And like I said before, I never would have called myself sensitive. But you have to be sensitive to be an artist. So if I'm an artist, I'm sensitive. I just like didn't know how to express or even get in touch with my feelings. But I've always been sensitive to the world around me. I just learned how to have armor on, and now that the armor is coming off, I feel things way more than I want to. I'm afraid of flying. I didn't know that. I'm afraid of all these things I had no idea that I'm terrified of, because I have just been so tough for so long. And I see that in your story so much because of all this stuff. But before the military, then in the military, between the military. And I'm like, yeah, man. So that kind of leads me to a question, and maybe you have something to say about what I just said, but what have you been identifying things that you were just terrible at or surprised by, that you were like so not prepared for.
You know, and all of that is interesting that you said, because I had a slight fear of flying. I remember like college years, like the anxiety like manifests that way. I also think that, you know, I've made in the last 12 years a complete change in my life from, you know, wanting to die to being like anxious that something is going to happen because my life is so great and my loved ones are so amazing.
Yeah, that's it too.
Yeah, you know, so it's just like that is kind of difficult. But what I also wanted to say about the emotions, it's like we can't just skip things in life, right? You can't just skip like whole phases of development without that coming out in other ways, you know, and like needing to go through that. You know, so one of the most helpful things my therapist told me is that if you've experienced, you know, SA as a child, like you didn't get to have that normal, like teenage awakening.
Yeah.
So like go read youth books, go read YA fiction, you know, and like YA fantasy is some of the best, I think. Yeah. And you know, I felt this in different ways. Like for my 36th birthday, I threw myself a giant princess party. It was basically a wedding without men, except the one dressed like a prince to serve us enchanted wine, which we had female comedians write the labels for. You know, and even that, I was like, so even with this amazing party, and my 2 weddings, like that's 3 days in my life that I've gotten to dress up like a princess, you know? And then, you know, other ways, like when I lost a sibling recently, to the way that we lose cult kids and soldiers. And like my first response was just absolute rage. Like I could not even go to his funeral because I would literally just sit in my garage and just like howl. And I was just like really, really, really mourning the painful, painful life that he led. But ultimately realized like I'm mourning that for all of us.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't get to have a childhood. And it's like unfair and awful and like random, you know? And it's I think we need to really process that when we're healing and realize that like it's okay to have emotions. It's, you know, one that I just admitted to myself recently, like I have this wonderful relationship with my mom now, and I'm pissed off that I didn't get to grow up with her. That I wasn't raised by her. And like I'm never gonna get that time back. Unless we're like 75 and 90 in the nursing home with the crochet circles and like the storytelling. You know, like there are certain things that you can't go back and relive and heal. And you just have to kind of acknowledge, you know. And so I told my mom that and we talked about it. And, you know, like this is the life. There's a healing quote that I like that says, you know, you're healing. 1, you know, you're healing when peace and tranquility don't sound like boredom. And 2, like when you stop wishing for a do-over. And that one I think is really important because it's like you've gone through it all, you've processed it all, and now you're like here ready to experience the life that's in front of you.
Don't you think that, like, I hope there's no more, but I swear there's always more. Every time I think I've processed something else comes up, and I'm like, oh my God.
So I thought I processed everything because I wrote not 1, but 2 books, right? So I wrote Uncultured, looking at the groups around me. And then I was asked by the Army to testify against my ex-husband for being a white supremacist. So then I wrote Un-American, which is a video book on my Patreon, about like looking internally. And then readers of Uncultured told me about my 20-year disordered eating that I had in trigger warnings. And I was like, okay. I literally remember being like, okay, that's what we're handling now. Like, that's what we're on now, you know? And I just see it as, I don't know, it's almost like you're clearing out a pile of rubble, you know, to like get out of this cave. And you like take one thing and like it's still behind you, right? Like this rock is still there, but it's not like blocking out all of the light and happiness. And that's a great analogy that I just came up with.
I like that analogy. Also, like Anthony, my husband, uses a video game analogy, and I was like, oh yeah, that I like that one too because it's building on things. Because before, first, like the first hard level of the video game for me was to tackle like the issue with home and being afraid to actually have a home that felt safe rather than. I mean, I literally, I would, I so my friends used to be like, well, you could take the girl out of the truck, but not the truck out of the girl. Because, Jesus, are you ever going to unpack? Like, even when I moved into a place for years, I just lived in Tupperware containers, didn't have hangers. And people are like, you have a home now. And I'm like, right. So it's like I had all these issues around home, which makes sense because of my essay stuff. And then it was like romantic relationship. And that video game was like 20 years of, or like, then they all kind of overlap. But I do, now it's more around money and my relationship to money because I didn't realize how messed up that one is and how much it's tied to all this other crap. But I like the idea of like, okay, you know, I did this like dragon in this level of video game, and I got some coins and I got some experience, and like now I'm at another level. And but I also believe it's kind of discovering yourself, and
Yeah.
I like both of these analogies.
Well, and that was super crucial for me. So I have kind of figured out that like once you can say it in words, you're like you've got a grasp on that thing, and you're kind of moving it behind you. You know, so here I am. I'm 33 years old. I have a 6-year-old child. I've written this whole book. I've just spent a semester studying social identity theory, right? So group identity. And then it just hits me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I never got to form a personal identity, right? Like I literally never did. And as an adult, whenever like Daniella would start peeking out, I would be like, nope, that's scary. Let's go be a super soldier, you know? And it was interesting because I was like, oh, okay, like now I can just go figure out who I want to be, you know? Like it's realizing that like you are this person, but you didn't get to choose any of that because you grew up in such a coercive environment. Yeah. Right? And so that has really been healing for me. And you know, one of the things I tell people all the time, because appearance control is such an important part of coercive control. Yeah. And also because in America, white women are supposed to be quiet, skinny, and a light shade of beige. You know, I always tell them like wear wacky outfits, you know. So just like wear something in public that just like doesn't have an obvious explanation, right? Be a little costumey, be a little showy, because like you can. You're the adult in your life. Right. And that's a concept that I think is really, really hard for us, you know, because again, we didn't get to like, you know, my daughter's 8 years old and she's in charge of a lot of things about her own life, how she wants to dress and, you know, how she wants to set up her room. And like, I didn't get any of that. Yeah. So I say this line in Uncultured, like, is it possible to be an adult without ever having been a child? Yeah. And like, it is just not a functioning, happy, healed adult.
One of the things that it's like, on the one hand, I know that, especially being from the South, you know, as a white woman, I've been infantilized and purity culture. So I'm like a little flower, a precious flower, which all that is you know, tied, especially like I think the South is like the ground zero for all all the problems in the U.S.
And also purity culture is pedophilia culture.
Exactly. And so when I realized that like the purity culture and like my virginity and my body, and especially this idea of like saving myself and being pure, that all that was when I became a history major in Montana. I had to get out of the South to unlearn all this stuff, and found out that was all rooted in anti-blackness and to justify slavery. I was like, what? Like it motivated me more to be like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. That whole thing has been hard to figure out, because I just was like, I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, I don't want it. I was like asexual. Everyone thought I was asexual for most of my, because I was celibate for like 12 years straight because I wanted nothing to do with any of that, because I had a sneaky suspicion it would derail me and take me away from being the tough, strong girl. And then I was a tomboy in all these boys clubs, like all these areas of my life, like, and like one of my nieces is like 11 and watching, she's entering the whole puberty thing, and it's triggering me so much because I was like, oh right, this is how it's supposed to happen. It's a natural progression, rather than all the things that I associate with it.
That is the thing about parenting that I didn't think about. Oh.
So anyway, just find it, like, I thought that what I realized is that, like, the more I know myself, the more I realize I don't know myself. Like, it's good to, like, discover yourself, but then I'm also evolving. I'm ever changing. Sometimes I get sick of this one thing and I decide to do something else, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you have to get to, right? And so I have this 3-part model of deconstruction when you leave a cult or an abusive situation. So first you have to have the crack in the brainwashing, and you have to physically and mentally leave, right? And those things can be years apart from each other. And then you have about a decade, I believe, and it starts when you start it, of unpacking, understanding, like, why you were in a cult, even if you were born in it, and what impacts that had on your personality and identity. And it's kind of like, it's not till you're really toward the end of that you can start on 3, which is building new models, going forward with new models. And I think, like, it has to be intentional. Like, you have to know, you have to understand, like, I've rejected this model, because that's what cults are, right? They give you an entire framework for how to live your life, right? Thousands of rules of how to live your life.
Yeah.
And I think at first, like, we don't know anything better than to just do the opposite, right?
Yeah,
It's just like completely the opposite. So I know way back when I was like, I will never spank children, because, and it wasn't because I inherently believed all of it was abusive, because of course I had been programmed in, like, that's how you handle children. Yeah. But I was just like, no, I've seen adults lose their temper. I've seen horrible things, so I will never do it. And then as I understand that, and, like, I don't want to do that, then you can go look at, like, other models of child rearing, and then like intentionally decide. Yeah. So I think there's also this really kind of, like, dangerous time for us in the beginning when we've first gotten free, and everyone laughs at the part in Uncultured when I get out when I'm 15 and my email password is without rules. It's just like, I can do whatever I want. But, I always tell people, I'm like, you can do anything without a framework. It's just harder, right? And I think there's a time where we're kind of trash people because we're like, don't know what our value system actually is. We just know that we're rejecting the one there. A lot of times we can be compulsive liars a little bit because, like, we were taught, I call it justified secrecy in cults or, like, abusive households. Like, my daughter's not growing up with any explanation why lying is cool. There's just all of this stuff. And I think it's like, we really have to understand, right? And, like, figure out who we want to be. Like, we had these experiences, but now you get to choose who you want to be. Not that like magically gets rid of trauma. Of course it doesn't, but it's, I think it's this pretty long process, until you finally have, like, built your new framework for how you want to live your life. And the hardest thing to understand, one, is that cults give you a feeling of superiority, and out here in the real world, you're not superior to anyone.
Yep.
So, and then part of it is just, like, understanding that, like, this is your life. You can do what you want. One of my favorite anti-cult quotes is, there are many valid ways to live a life. And that's why I tell people to go with the dressing. Like, just wear something wacky in public and just, like, you need to internalize in a few different ways that like
Mm-hmm.
the only person in charge of your life is you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
not your pastor, not your God, not your husband, not your, like you are in
Yep.
charge of your life. I just want people to know is that this decade of deconstructing, I think of it as a very steep hill, you know, or a bar graph, or a, yeah, whatever that's called.
Mm-hmm.
That like in the beginning you're gonna feel fine. You're just like, oh, cracking the brainwashing, and then like
Mm-hmm.
4 years in, you're gonna be asking yourself like, why am I broken now? I was fine. Like I was
Yeah.
just fine. Like now
Yep.
everything, and like it gets better. It really does. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I am just now getting to this point where, I mean, for example, I can't tell you how long I've been a daily wine drinker for, but it's a long time. And it was just like, this is the price I pay to survive my life.
Mm-hmm.
Not too much, but it's just like, this is the price I pay.
Mm-hmm.
And now I just don't need that so much,
Yeah.
you know, because
Yeah.
I've healed, and peace and tranquility is not boredom. And, you know, for me, the creating, and like, look, create
Yep.
whatever you create, but I swear, like, I go to bed at night planning all the scarfigans I'm going to make and what I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
transform clothes into, instead of like, oh, I hope I don't go back to this bad place in my dreams.
The creativity thing, to hit on that part again, is it really is healing, and it's, and it what I'm glad that you, I mean, I don't know, maybe you do sell your stuff, but for me, I this year I had to, I joined a drum club when I first moved to France, just to meet people. I didn't speak a word of French, but somehow I was like pretty good at the drum club, despite not knowing anything he's saying. I was just intuitively doing it, and then COVID shut it down for a while, and I rejoined this year, and I forgot how important it is to have something creative now that my job is based on creativity, because I have no boundaries around my work, because the algorithms also kind of act like a, you will do what we say. We have direct, you can't have direct access to the people who like your stuff. You have to go through
I mean, our society too, right? America
Yeah,
is just like, I joke all the time that I'm teaching my publisher that cult survivor is not a niche thing. Like many, if not most of us have survived coercive control in some way. You know, like part of
yeah,
why I wrote a book is because when you say like she survived a childhood in a sex cult and she was a woman at war, it doesn't like make you feel like you have anything in common with those experiences.
yeah.
But then you read the book and, you know, like all kinds of people relate to that experience, because
Yeah.
all kinds of people have been under coercive control in a different kind of way. Most important messages I can ever have for people is like, people can understand. When we are excavating these traumas, especially ones that happen in our formative years, like it did affect everything, right? Like it did affect everything.
Yeah.
And so you have to like understand that, right? Like understand how it shaped your personality, understand how it changed you.
Yeah.
People look and they're like, why? But why would you want to do that? And I just want people who are on the beginning stages to know, like, it gets better and you get through it. You know, I mean, I was advised to like not talk about my own cult experiences at all, because then I would never get to stop telling that story. And I've actually found the opposite. Like I told myself, I was like, I'm just going to lean so hard into being the cult lady that I'm going to come out the other side. And I think I've done a good job of being like, my very extreme experience shows me this, but also I've told it. And this is something else that I feel so important to talk about in the trauma community. You know, we talk about owning your story, but we don't really talk about like owning it, right? Like I took the worst things that happened to me for 27 years of my life and I put them in a product that people can buy when I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't take away the trauma, but it sure does help. So yeah, I think that's just really important too. But you know, you come out the other side where you are still the person you are, or you're the person you've created, and you're really comfortable with yourself, and you experience joy and happiness, and you can choose how much you talk about it. You know, like I chose to go make it a career, make talking about cults my thing, and like it's not traumatic to me the way it would have been if I had tried to do this when I was 21 and hadn't like been through all my things.
Yeah, I never put that together like that. But when I realized I had ADHD, I went to the same thing. I was like, what, oh my, like doom box. Like my whole life made sense. I was like, oh my god, it's been right there all along. And I actually was diagnosed as a teenager, but then I had narcolepsy, so people were like kind of focused more on that. Um, and then I went a little too far that way where ADHD explains everything. And I'm like, okay, this kind of reminds me of how I dealt with trauma. It was like, I don't want to, it makes sense to like look at everything through that lens for a little bit because it impact everything. But then I kind of have to take it off and like, but then I'll talk to someone's like, well, I do that too. And I don't have ADHD. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, but it's also just like, don't get stuck there, right? Yeah. Like this is so I am known to not be a fan of AA and to think it hits 10 out of 10 as a cult.
Yeah.
But like rehab, so does rehab, right? But there's a big difference. There's a big difference. You go to rehab, like sometimes you need the cult. That's what I tell people. Like sometimes you need the cult experience. You need the very black and white help, but you don't stay there for the rest of your life. You know, like, because that's where you just get stalled out, right? Like the whole reason that we're doing healing is so that we can like go have a happy life and, you know, live the life that we want. So just like, don't get stuck there. Once you've gone and built your dream life where you are safe, where you can deconstruct, you have to then learn how to just be safe in your life and enjoy what you've created. And that can be just as hard as the rest of it.